All right, so continuing on with our show and continuing to talk about recruiting here, we have a comment from Gixxer Squid, one of our longtime friends here on the USC channel. Matt, and I'll put this to Ethan as well. Do you attribute our recent recruitment success to coaching, NIL, recruitment fit? FYI, so happy Benny Wiley is gone. We've been advocating for that. Yes, we have. And we'll talk a little bit more about the strength and conditioning program in a little bit. But just Gixxer, very simply, like the recruiting success. One thing I mentioned earlier that Ethan also talked about is just how steady the recruiting wins are. Like it's not just occasional, an occasional drips and drabs. It's a soaker. It's a downpour. It is raining hard with new top athletes at USC. So when you get that kind of steady, consistent elite performance, and it happened right after Chad Bowden came. This did not happen before Chad Bowden came aboard. So I think we can say they got the right general manager. They got the professional expertise. We talked about this so much, Gixxer, last year with Tim Prangley, that, what's going on? Where's the administrative structure? They're supposed to be, smart guys figuring it out who know how the process works, who know how to structure everything. This was structure. The NIL and the administrative room, the people in the room did not know what to do, how to do it. Chad Bowden had instantly brought the professional product, mindset, know-how, like he did it at Notre Dame, comes to USC, and it happens right away. That is not an idle coincidence. So Ethan, anything to add just in terms of, attributing our recruiting success, and maybe, how Jen Cohen figures into this. She hired Chad Bowden. Obviously Chad Bowden is the one who made things happen, but I think it was just a sense of someone finally realized that we just have to have the right. It was less about, can you recruit? It's more of, does he know how to structure the office, the operation? That was really the hurdle that USC had to get past. It wasn't so much like, can you close the sale? It's, can you run a shop? Like, can you run an operation? This goes back to, something that we talked about before, is that Dave Emmerich was supposedly the general manager, but he really wasn't hired as a quote unquote general manager. That he kind of held the position, but he, several years ago, the rapid change in this business, Ethan, the way a general manager functions today in 2025, it was not the same when Dave Emmerich originally came aboard. So there was just so much change, and it just took a little while for Jen Cohen to realize, okay, what we actually need in a GM, it's the job description's different, a couple years later.
I do want to emphasize both Gixxer's and your point on NIL, because I think, talking about Chad Bowden, talking about the changes in college football, a lot of that all kind of ties back into NIL and just the changing landscape. And I think that, as a student at USC, in my 4 years, and I'm kind of coming up on the end of my last year as a student and graduating here in a few days. But I think something that I've really seen take off, has been just recruiting, and not just in football, but kind of across all of the sports. I feel like when I arrived on campus in 2021, I'm a big sports fan, so I was still excited about a lot of things, but a lot of, these USC programs had a lot of history that I was excited about, and a couple of prominent players. The basketball team was coming off of its March Madness run that same year. So, there's a little bit of excitement there because that was the furthest run that they'd made in the modern era, kind of, but it didn't feel as though USC was a nationally prominent program in a lot of these sports at the time. And obviously, with the exception of beach volleyball, where Dane Blanton has done just an incredible job, and they've won, 4 straight national championships, and then and they'd won that my first year as well. But with that exception, it felt like USC was kind of middling around in a lot of these sports. And then the NIL news came out that first year, And then everything just kind of exploded. It kind of started with the Lincoln Riley hire, and it started with Lincoln Riley bringing in Caleb Williams and bringing in, Jordan Addison and Travis Dye and a lot of those guys. But it extended to a lot of other sports as well. Men's basketball hasn't had a lot of recent success. They've kind of, wasted some of the incredible talent. But the fact of the matter remains that they did bring in Bronny James and they did bring in Isaiah Collier, and Isaiah Collier was the number one recruit in the country, and Bronny James was a guy who, brought in a lot of that same excitement. And, there was a lot of hype, even if it wasn't fulfilled, at least. And then on the women's basketball side of things, obviously, USC fans know well, bringing in Juju Watkins and how that's transformed the program, and bringing in, 3 5-stars the following year, including Kennedy Smith, who's obviously sticking around, and we're very grateful for that. And then, going into next year, bringing in Jazzy Davidson, who's the number one player in the country again. And even baseball, baseball's kind of gone through the ringer a bit in my first couple of years. They brought in a new coach, and now they're on the turnaround, and they very well could be seeing the College Baseball World Series this year. So I think the kind of through line through all of that, even aside from football, has been NIL, and has been excitement around the kind of NIL branding partnerships and opportunities that you can have in a place like LA, where it's, there's a lot of brands that kind of make LA their home. There's a lot of, ties to Hollywood, just a lot of general excitement around pop culture, and it's kind of the pop culture capital of the world even. So I think NIL is something that should be emphasized. I think that's one of the reasons that Chad Bowden has been brought in, is to kind of, help flex USC's NIL opportunities and help kind of, utilize that market that USC's done a decent job of utilizing, but probably could have been doing even more to do, especially, not having a guy in Chad Bowden's seat who's like kind of dedicated to that NFL free agent GM role. So I think that NIL could and should be playing a huge role for a program like USC, and I would definitely want to emphasize that point.